The path I picked when I did my $1 million a month math, I was super selfish on how I tried to do it. I was like, dude, I'm so tired of working with the amount of staff I have. I'm so tired of working with the amount of clients I have. What could I specifically do in my business? And I came up with an egregious number. I was like, I want to make $1 million a month with only 10 deals. What would that math look like? That means I needed to get paid $100K per deal. That didn't seem outrageous to me because, like I said, I had a guy who'd paid us $100K a month, but I didn't think that there'd be nearly enough people out there to pay us $100K a month in a service fee. So I figured I'd have to get there through rev shares. When I looked at a lot of the deals that we had that were successful and good, and people that we did like paid advertising strategy for and just executed, or even some consulting deals, we were cranking low couple $1,000,000 a month, which is really the whole point of this entire channel, is just to share lessons from people who have been there, done that, talking about $1,000,000 months. And so at that point in my career, I looked at my revenue I was getting off of those people and how much I was helping them, and I was getting nothing. I was getting service fees. So I thought to myself, I was like, I need to do net profit shares, what I call rev shares. And that personally, that changed the game for me. I went from charging, a couple grand all the way up to low tens of thousands a month to a service fee plus a rev share. So my initial deal was I would do it for 10K a month in a service fee, and I'll do a 10% net profit share. And that would mean I needed to net somebody $1 million a month off actions that were trackable to us in order for us to get that 100K a month. Now, listen to this shit. As outrageous as it sounded when I first originated that idea, it took me a couple months to experience more and more pain to eventually say, all right, I'm gonna fucking do it. I walked in, fired and refunded about 109K worth of deals. I made that contraction because I needed the time back. Like when I did my time analysis, I literally had to cut a whole bunch of deals and a whole bunch of staff to reclaim my time. I had to make a contraction. It truly just wasn't possible for me to find a way out otherwise because I couldn't squeeze enough time out of other things that I was doing. I was too in the weeds already on everything. So long story short, I had to contract. When I made that contraction, I got rid of the 2 offices. I only had 4 staff left. I got rid of all the other 23 of them. I'd come back and I isolated myself here to Miami. It was me, my sales guy, Leo, that we have today still, and a handful of other support staff for different things. Jay would have come in right around that same time for us. Moral of the story is, it took me 3 months to close a guy who started paying us 25K a month in a service fee because he wanted to pay me more than everybody else. He was like, how much are your top deals paying you? And I was transparent with him. I was like, my biggest deal pays me like 10, 15K a month, give or take the month, and what we can earn off a rev share. He was like, dude, I want to be your #1 priority. I'm gonna pay you 25K a month and I'll give you that rev share. And it was a little smaller rev share than the 10%, but still big, and a rev share, something I wasn't getting prior. Dude, it took 8 months to get that deal to $2 million a month, 2.5 mil a month at its peak. Now I was getting a little more than 200K a month off that deal at certain points in that deal. So within the first year of me committing to that, outrageous fucking pricing model, we had managed to get a deal and pull it off. Now, for several years after that, like through essentially COVID, the game was, how can we accumulate more of those deals and obviously retain the ones that we've got? And it took me a little bit past COVID to finally get to the point where I achieved my goal and my outcome just off the agency and getting those deals accumulated. But I'll tell you, dude, it was a long pursuit, a lot longer than I thought. There were all kinds of deals, and I had to say no to a lot of stuff that previously I would have absolutely been able to take on that would have made sense. People that we could have worked with, but they were just too small and they wouldn't have paid us enough, and it would have ended up in a position where we have things like this, where we just have far too many of them, which ends up taking up far too much of our time and not really making us a lot of money. I can't stress enough, we learned a very valuable set of lessons in that process, which was, we gotta say no to the wrong deals, we gotta say yes to the right deals, and we gotta know what the right deals look like. And long story short, deal point by deal point, I analyzed and became aware of exactly what a good deal looked like and what a bad deal looked like. And I would always say no to bad deals, and I'd only say right to the right deal. I'd only say yes to the right deals. Dude, that caused me to say no to like 8 out of 10 people, sometimes all the way up to 9 out of 10 people, give or take what time frame we were in. I had to apply constraints to how I scaled, okay? Everything you do, believe it or not, is already influenced by what you think the situation should be like. As an example, I was telling you the story about how when I would try to go on certain trips that didn't have any kind of financial or business upside, I would feel anxious. So think about this. All the differences there and essentially the same experiences is a label that we put on ourselves. They're an identity characteristic. We got to do that same thing with the types of deals that we take on. You have to have a very clear set of constraints. Are you familiar with gutters and bowling? You know what that is?
I am, yeah.
So gutters and bowling are essentially just a constraint that you put on the lane that obviously forces the ball to stay within a specific direction, right? We need to put gutters on our thinking where when we go to take on a deal, what is the right deals and what do the wrong deals look like? Now, you mentioned out of the 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours a day you put into these 62 deals you got, about 1/3 of your clients are needing communication in a day. I got to ask you, you a simple question. Are they the same people that require communication? Like some of your deals are just good. They sit there, they're fine, they work well, and then other deals are much more problematic and higher communication? Or is it relatively equal across the board? They're all semi-problematic.
They're the lower ticket people.
So the lower ticket people pay what?
1,500 to 800.
And out of that revenue that you take on, obviously you take it on because you're trying to overcome the churned revenue that you just lost. And so new revenue is still better than just losing revenue month over month and lowering your overall
Profit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you still take on those deals, but what does that end up causing you in terms of a consequence? And remember, consequences can be positive and negative. What happens as a result of that cause and effect relationship?
It takes away my time, making me more stressed, not get me out of the current situation.
That's exactly right. And so it's important to note, like technically I had made a pretty significant contraction. I personally cut about 1/3 of my total revenue when I made my big shift. And I gotta be honest with you, it felt like the biggest relief ever. I still today, I don't think I've actually had a greater sensation of like, oh, thank God I did that, than that moment right there because of how much relief it had provided to me while I was technically cutting my revenue in 1/3 of what it was. Now, I want to be fair in saying, like on this channel and almost every single video I've ever talked about, I actually encourage people to do the opposite and to do revenue-driven actions and to make money. But sometimes one of the biggest revenue-driven actions that you can take is to actually lose a little bit of money in the short term so you can free up a tremendous amount of your time and put that same time that you just reclaimed into the highest revenue generating things that you're currently unable to do because of the randomness that's robbing you in the day. And the people that are paying you, these $800 to $1,500 people, the lower ticket ones, I mean, dude, they're fucking you, it sounds like, compared to anything else.